Good afternoon, psychology staff. I am here to make the case for PicturePlus as a potentially superior teaching tool. But before getting into details, I would like to make clear the overarching reason we are here. PowerPoint is killing education. Recent studies of the PowerPoint presentation demonstrates using the PowerPoint slideware software to facilitate lecture yields no greater learning benefits than that of overhead slides. Despite showing initial promise, the novelty of the PowerPoint has long since passed, leaving students today, quite frankly, utterly uninterested in subject matter. PowerPoint critics do not find these outcomes surprising. Tuft argues PowerPoint's one-sided nature, abbreviated content, and misleading headings always weaken verbal and spatial reasoning and almost always misrepresent statistical data. In addition, common formatting tendencies contribute to PowerPoint's ineffectiveness, including, but not limited to, standardization of slides, unused space, and drastic oversimplification. PowerPoint inherently leads students to believe only the bullet points presented on the screen are noteworthy, and PowerPoint lacks an elaboration process within which higher order analysis is necessary. After all, too often, the slideshow goes up, the speaker reads the content verbatim, and end slideshow. Even the most adroit speaker can only compensate to a certain degree for the monotony inbred in the bulleted list that typically comprise PowerPoint presentations. Perhaps PowerPoint's greatest detriment is the fact that the traditional presentation style results in encoding overload. Pavio's dual coding theory asserts there are two mechanisms for encoding stimuli, the verbal and the nonverbal. Conventional PowerPoint presentations overload the verbal encoding mechanism. Specifically, students are asked to read overhead slides while listening to an elaboration of the bullet points and writing down the important parts of lecture, what Craig calls the triple delivery. In a study by Speck, participants learned to copy a paragraph while listening to a verbal overture, and after 6 weeks, the participants achieved proficiency. But if a student is constrained by the traditional 16-week semester, then theoretically they would not be taking notes effectively until sometime around midterm. It is very possible that students at the university level become well adapted to the triple delivery presentation method. Even still, this does not mean that a more effective process is not needed. Because best case scenario, the speaker is knowledgeable, energetic, and well spoken. The presentation is fluid, the content is gripping, and the timing is adequate. However, more common, excessive wordiness, standardized slides, and stale animations leave no wonder why social media disrupts student-teacher eye contact, divvies attention between smartphone and smart projector screens, keeps thumbs too busy to take notes. Instructors are constantly at odds with text messages, GroupMe, and Snapchat. Administrators are tasked with creating policies and procedures to combat the pernicious interruptions. Still, despite cell phone policies everywhere, technology is winning that battle. And while technology is off to the races with students steadily trying to keep up with it, teachers are still relying on antiquated, understudied techniques, resulting in a gap between teaching and learning. Now, picture this: a PowerPoint presentation succinctly bulleted. Picture headings complementary to their content, fonts that don't require an interpreter, and color combinations that don't cause splitting headaches. Picture the presenter making more eye contact with the audience than the screen. Picture developing the traditional PowerPoint into a truly unparalleled teaching tool, not just convention. And the picture will be of what I call PicturePlus. So what is a PicturePlus presentation? Simple. It is a PowerPoint presentation with no bullets, only pictures. Sure, a lot of presenters use images in their presentations. Usually the images are small, captioned, and in some way complement the words. But what I'm suggesting here is a more pervasive roll of pictures. One image covering the entirety of the slide. But why? The conventionality of PowerPoint is a good number one reason. With 66% of Fortune 500 companies and a good proportion of teachers reporting to use PowerPoint frequently, it is safe to say that PowerPoint is the presentation status quo. But unlike more expensive and technology heavy alternatives, such as the two-layer PowerPoint or flipping and clicking, a Picture Plus style presentation requires only a change in the content selection. That is, only requires knowledge of how to use a search engine. Therefore, no unfamiliar technological procedures are introduced. Instructors' familiarity with PicturePlus's technology requirements will possibly increase their confidence in using the presentation style. But PicturePlus's potential effectiveness goes beyond its user-friendly qualities. Using PicturePlus as an instructional tool can possibly eliminate the verbal encoding overload that's inherent in conventional PowerPoint presentations. Verbal encoding errors are lessened if the competing material is nonverbal. So then theoretically, with a picture covering the entirety of the slide, students are only responsible for copying the contents of the lecture without the additional attentional burden of copying the words on the PowerPoint slide. In turn, freeing cognitive resources. In addition to reducing cognitive overload, a Picture Plus presentation style can possibly facilitate learning on a number of other classroom tasks: recall, recognition, comprehension, and transfer. More specifically, instructors often ask students to recall and recognize information, prove comprehension of an exposition, and transfer a set of skills from one task to another. Pictures are better equipped than text to teach such skills. When pictures are a memory cue, they recall better than words. In several instances, pictures reduce the likelihood of making errors, verbal encoding and false recognition errors, for example. And pictures are also better in facilitating the learning of foreign languages, a task for which PowerPoint is likely to be inefficient. When considering Zoll's work, the picture superiority effect is not surprising, and therefore neither is Picture Plus's probable effectiveness. That is, because a Picture Plus style presentation consists of only pictures, it engages more parts of the brain than those needed for verbal encoding. Information retention is likely increased because more of the brain is activated. When brain activity increases, more neurons fire, more neural networks are activated, and consequently learning occurs. More evidence of Picture Plus's potential effectiveness as a teaching tool can be found in Mayer's 10 principles of multimedia. For example, the modality principle favors the Picture Plus presentation style. In 17 out of 17 experiments, learners perform better on transfer tasks if words are spoken versus text. Mayer's redundancy principle, temporal contiguity principle, spatial contiguity principle, and segmenting principles also offer relevant evidence, but for time's sake, I will move forward. Another possible reason Picture Plus is likely to increase information retention is its similarity to mnemonic strategies. Relevant here is mnemonic devices' dependency on the brain's natural tendency to make associations. That is, target items are associated with a familiar peg word, number code, or personal space. Then, during the retrieval process, the associated cues automatically bring to mind target items. In the same way, because pictures are the most effective retrieval cue, a Picture Plus style presentation slide can serve as a retrieval cue for concepts of terms. Also similar to mnemonic devices, by using a Picture Plus style presentation, the picture on the slide can possibly afford an imagery elaboration process. For example, mnemonic devices based on imagery produce 2 to 3 times better performance than rote rehearsal or memorization tasks. In addition, the use of imagery memory strategies have demonstrated the capacity to facilitate comprehension of a second language, a task for which PowerPoint is likely to be incapable. Imagery-based learning strategies are most powerful in explaining performance on an amalgam of tasks, even with frequency and meaning as competing variables. Moreover, pictures have demonstrated the capacity to better a learner's ability to generate sentences and compose definition. Most telling, imagery activates many areas of the brain, And again, brain activity is critical to learning. So to sum, PicturePlus's potential effectiveness is supported by its resemblance to mnemonic devices, specifically PicturePlus's reliance on brain association mechanisms and imagery processes via the affordances of an IEP. And the pervasive beneficial effects of imagery on memory cannot be overstated, because Miller's work demonstrates the beneficial effects of memory on memory of recoding and rephrasing. The imagery elaboration process afforded by PicturePlus can possibly serve as both a recoding and rephrasing process. More specifically, the student is tasked with recoding essential components from the verbal to the visual code and rephrasing essential components from instructor's pictorial representation to their own pictorial representation. In brief, because conventional presentation styles do not afford an IEP, they too are less likely to be as effective as PicturePlus. However, like introducing a pain pill to the market that's only been tested against a placebo, PicturePlus's effectiveness is futile if it does not surpass the benefits of current instructional methodology. So how exactly could PicturePlus presentation be implemented into classroom? Relatively simple. Pavio's work demonstrates the beneficial effects of self-generated imagery on memory. Therefore, this unique IEP can possibly augment retention benefits when students are asked to produce their own example. In the same way that an instructor may stop in the middle of the lecture being facilitated by a conventional PowerPoint presentation to ask students to produce an example. An instructor can use specific Picture Plus slides to emphasize key points. Said another way, the PicturePlus presentation can be thought of as consisting of two types of slides: instructional and decorative. Instructional slides will be the slides allocated for further elaboration. Think of these slides as picture substitutes for would-be bullet points. For example, in an introductory psychology class, an instructor could simply display a picture of Sigmund Freud while dictating to the students the main points of his psychoanalysis theory. The flexibility of PicturePlus presentation allows for instructors to get as detailed as they desire. For example, inserting a picture to represent every component of his psychoanalysis theory, like the id and superego. And instructors can ask students what in this picture fits the description of the id. Next, ask students to think of their own examples. Some students can share if they wish. On the other hand, like their name implies, the quarter slides are not necessary. For example, this picture is a play on the traditional use of the word ego. The purpose of the slide is not extreme elaboration, although it can be, but it's merely to keep the audience awake. This would be a better instructional picture to represent the ego. Most specific to the classroom, a review of current teaching techniques, elaborative interrogation, summarization, and interleave practice only ranked moderately in effectiveness. I propose that the imagery elaboration process can enhance their effectiveness. For example, summarization can be enhanced by asking students to possibly come up with one or two pictures. In this way, students are prevented from giving a detailed regurgitation, but instead must understand important concepts. Mayer's pre-training principles suggest concrete terms first. So in all, there is a theoretical art to building an effective Picture Plus style presentation, with the emphasis being on pre-training principles and art. The only rule is one picture covering the entirety of the slides. If obligated to name one vital component of creating a Picture Plus presentation, it is Mayer's personalization principle. Instructors should choose pictures that are less formal. Pictures that represent the content are turned from them. Starry Night happens to be my favorite class of work of art, but Mona Lisa, pop art, or a simple picture of this house just as easily could have been used. Instructors should explain their selection of instructional slides and let their explanation be an impetus for further elaboration. In this way, PicturePlus adheres to Isaac's suggestion that presentations should feature more questions than answers. Additionally, without text or space left on the screen, PicturePlus avoids formatting blunders frequently noted by PowerPoint critics. In short, because PicturePlus's theoretical evidence is founded in empirically supported cognitive theory and processes, it is likely to afford learning benefits that surpass in conventional instructional methodology. So, to conclude, picture this: a simple modification of the traditional PowerPoint presentation revolutionizing the use of slideware software. No one else falls victim to death by PowerPoint or finds themselves staring at the presenter's profile, presenting the words on the slide. Picture a presentation that revives education. Students feeling compelled to come to class because the pre-distributed slides elicit excitement and wonder. Picture curiosity and excitement on their faces during lecture. Picture meeting students where they are. That is, picture a presentation using the same image-dependent tactics that draw students' attention to social media. Picture a presentation style that uses fundamental cognitive psychology to enhance classroom experience, to make lecturing more efficient, to bridge the gap between teaching and learning. And after indulging in this literature review, I hope the next time you go to make a presentation, you picture a PicturePlus.